Iris Vaughn sat quietly on the narrow cot in the far corner of the garage, the cool concrete floor beneath her feet contrasting sharply with the worn quilt folded neatly over her lap. Sunlight struggled through the single dusty window, casting a faint glow over the sparse space that now served as her recovery room. The hum of distant voices filtered from the kitchen inside the house, voices she once filled with laughter and charm. Now, it all felt distant, almost unreachable. Her once steady hands trembled slightly as she traced the familiar lines on the fabric, memories of a life no one outside these walls seemed to recognize fleeting through her mind. Iris had been a force in the world, a secret tech investor with an uncanny ability to spot innovation before anyone else. Yet here she was, stripped of everything, moved into the chilly garage after the stroke that had wrenched away her independence. Margaret, her eldest daughter, stood just inside the garage door, her expression unreadable. She was a woman in her mid-40s, with sharp eyes and a demeanor shaped by years of responsibility. Margaret had insisted on this arrangement, believing it was best to protect her mother, though in her heart she doubted Iris's capacity to manage on her own. "Mom, try to rest," Margaret said softly, her voice firm but distant. Iris glanced up, her lips parting as if to speak, but nothing came. She had so much to say, so many thoughts trapped beneath the surface, but Margaret's presence reminded her that her words would go unheard. Later that afternoon, Iris's grandchildren arrived, bright-eyed and curious. They hesitated at the threshold of the garage, their expressions filled with a mix of sadness and confusion at the sight of their grandmother confined to such a place. They exchanged glances, their questions quietly unspoken, as Margaret turned them away swiftly, reinforcing the invisible barrier that now separated Iris from the family she loved. The days that followed Iris's transfer to the garage were heavy with a silence that clung to the household like a dense fog. Inside the house, Margaret paced with a determined briskness that left little room for hesitation or debate. She believed, quite stubbornly, that she was acting in her mother's best interest, even if the evidence sat uneasily with the flickers of sharpness she sometimes glimpsed in Iris's eyes. It was during a Sunday family gathering that the tension between what was seen and what was real surfaced most visibly. Margaret had organized the event, a careful arrangement designed to maintain the illusion that Iris's condition was steadily, if not miraculously, improving. The garage door stayed firmly shut, funneling the family's attention away from the quiet figure inside. Her grandchildren, Lucas and Emily, arrived early, their youthful energy clashing with the somber atmosphere. They had come to see their grandmother, to share stories and bring her a sense of the world beyond the walls of the garage. As they stood just outside, knocking tentatively, Margaret opened the door a crack, her glare brief but sharp. "Mom isn't up for visitors today," she said firmly, before closing it again. Inevitably, whispers of frustration and concern flickered between the siblings. Later that afternoon, as the gathering quietly moved indoors, Emily sat back on the fringe of the conversation with a troubled expression. Lucas, ever the more outspoken, finally broke the silence between them. "Why did Grandma get put in the garage?" "She's not just broken," he said, his voice low but charged with disbelief. Emily nodded, biting her lip. "I know. She was always so smart. Mom acts like she's fragile, like she can't even understand what's going on." Lucas frowned. "I remember Mom saying that after the stroke, Grandma isn't the same. That she's confused. But when I saw her in the garage, she was looking at the clock like she was waiting for something. She's not just waiting to die, Em. I think Mom's just scared." Their conversation was interrupted by Aunt Dana, Margaret's younger sister, who approached with quiet concern. She had noticed the distance growing between Margaret and Iris but feared confronting it directly. "It's hard to see Mom like this," she murmured, sympathetically. "But maybe we're not giving her enough credit. Remember how she handled that tech startup's crisis years ago? She's a tough woman." Emily brightened at Dana's words. "Exactly. I want to believe Grandma still knows who she is, even if she can't say it." Determined to find answers, the the grandchildren confided their worries to their parents quietly and began searching for any hidden sign of their grandmother's former self. Emily visited the local library's archives one afternoon, scanning old magazines and articles related to Iris Vaughn. Hours slipped by, and just as she was about to give up for the day, she found it, a glossy cover featuring a poised and confident Iris Vaughn, under the headline, "The Secret Tech Investor Changing Silicon Valley." The accompanying article described a sharp mind behind the scenes, a woman who had quietly steered prominent startups to success while staying out of the public eye. Sharing the discovery with Lucas on the way home, Emily's excitement bubbled. "Mom's been wrong about Grandma," she said, her voice a mix of awe and disbelief. "Grandma's not just a stroke victim. She's a genius." Their renewed faith didn't go unnoticed. Over dinner, Lucas broached the subject cautiously. "Mom, why does Grandma have to stay in the garage? She's brilliant, more than people realize." Margaret stiffened, folding her hands tightly on the table. "Lucas, your grandmother needs rest and quiet. The stroke was serious, and we have to be realistic." "But what about her mind?" Emily challenged gently. "Maybe she's trapped inside, but still brilliant. She needs us to remember who she is." Margaret's lips pressed together in silence. The room felt charged, the family divided between hope and caution. No one voiced what lingered just beneath the surface, a fear of loss, a reluctance to confront the truth about Iris's capabilities and condition. Over the next days, the children's visits became more frequent despite Margaret's attempts to minimize them. Emily would slip small gifts to Iris, a pencil for drawing, a notebook for writing, and Lucas brought recordings of interviews with innovators their grandmother admired. Iris's eyes would brighten with recognition at these small gestures, and occasionally, her fingers would twitch in response. Margaret noticed these visits, and with each one, her skepticism deepened. "She's not improving. These are just tricks to give you false hope," she warned the children one evening. "Don't get your hopes up." But the family's youngest generation wasn't deterred. They began encouraging each other to learn more, to dig past the surface of Iris's quiet confinement and the assumptions everyone had made about her. They shared theories, wondered if the specialists had missed something. Was Iris's mind as trapped as her body, or was there still a brilliant mind hidden beneath? One afternoon, Emily stumbled upon a small, hidden box beneath a loose floorboard in the garage. Inside were neatly folded sheets of stock certificates, company reports, and handwritten notes, all bearing Iris's signature. It became clear to them that while her body might struggle, her involvement in tech investing never really ended. The realization cast a new light on their grandmother's condition and the family's hesitation to accept it. How had Margaret and the others overlooked this vital piece of Iris's identity? The grandchildren's quiet rebellion was no longer just about visiting, it was about reclaiming a woman whose mind had been underestimated and mistreated. In the house, conversations grew uneasy. Margaret found herself isolated by her insistence on keeping Iris confined and under strict supervision. Doubts began to creep in unspoken. Had her caution become cruelty? Were they all ignoring Iris's true self in the name of protection? That night, as the family gathered for a late dinner that felt more like a truce than a celebration, Emily gently asked, "What if Grandma doesn't want to be hidden away? What if she's waiting for us to see her for who she really is?" Margaret's eyes flickered with something that looked like uncertainty before she looked away. No one answered. The room echoed with silent questions, unsettled and unresolved. The tension simmered beneath the surface, but somewhere in the garage, Iris listened, understood, and waited. Her mind was alive and stirring beneath the quiet exterior, a flame ready to rise. The family's assumptions were being challenged, and soon, everything would shift in ways none of them could yet imagine. Feel inspired by Iris's resilience? Keep watching. Iris Vaughn lay back against the thin pillow in her narrow bed, the faint hum of the street outside the garage filtering through the small, grimy window. Her pulse was slow, steady, but restless. The past few months had been a blur of frustration and forced silence, a suffocating cage crafted from well-meaning intentions and outright misunderstandings. The stroke had robbed her of much, yet Iris refused to surrender the fierce, bright mind within. Still, the question that gnawed at her was whether anyone beyond her grandchildren could see the fire smoldering beneath. Her fingers twitched as a flash of one of Emily's notebooks caught her eye, the pages filled with graphs, notes, and scribbled ideas from her most recent ventures. She had tried, in her limited ways, to keep the connection to the world she'd once navigated with sharp precision. But it was a one-sided effort. Margaret's insistence on limits and control felt like a quiet dismissal of not only her abilities but her very self. Margaret had been more than a daughter to Iris in recent months. She had become a gatekeeper, erecting barriers where none should exist. The garage, the stripped-down room, the absence of her belongings, it was all wrapped in an armor that protected Iris from what Margaret saw as harm, but also hid her away from life. During family visits, Margaret hovered, monitoring conversations and redirecting moments when Iris attempted to engage. It was suffocating, both physically and emotionally. One late afternoon, Emily approached the garage door, carrying a small voice recorder with a gentle smile. "Grandma," she said softly, "we've been working on something. It's a way for you to share your thoughts without needing to speak." Iris's eyes fluttered open wider than usual, a spark igniting in their depths. The device, simple but promising, was a gesture more profound than its form suggested. But Margaret hovered nearby when Emily tried to explain. "This won't help her," she interrupted sharply. "She's not capable of this anymore. Please, don't make things harder." Her tone was final, no room for argument. Emily's eyes flicked from her mother to her grandmother's yearning gaze. "Maybe you're wrong, Mom," she whispered, almost pleadingly. "Maybe she's still here in ways we don't want to believe." Margaret's jaw clenched, and she turned away, walking back toward the house without a word. The silence that followed was thick with unsaid things, regrets, fears, and a growing rift between Margaret's caution and her children's hopeful defiance. Later that evening, Dana, the softer voice in the family, found Margaret sitting alone in the dim kitchen. "You know," Dana began gently, "Mom isn't just the woman who's here now. She's a lifetime of strength and success. Ignoring that doesn't make her less, it makes us blind." Margaret stared into her tea, a mixture of guilt and defiance battling beneath her facade. "I don't want to lose her," she confessed quietly. "But I don't know how to help." As days grew warmer, the grandchildren's determination deepened. During a visit, they discovered a small, dusty box hidden beneath a loose plank in the garage floor. It contained carefully stored stock certificates, legal papers, and notes, all signed by Iris. These weren't relics of a distant past but evidence of ongoing involvement, quiet yet commanding management of a sizable tech portfolio. The revelation rocked the family. Dust seemed to settle differently now. The documents whispered truths Margaret had refused to see. Iris's mind, though confined, was far from dormant. The grandchildren tried to share the discovery, hoping it would open eyes. Instead, Margaret's defenses flared. "That's history," she said sharply. "Doesn't change where she is now." But Dana, emboldened by the evidence and the grandchildren's resolve, challenged, "Is it history if it's still happening? If she's still in control, still deciding?" Margaret's world felt as if it was tilting. She was caught between her fear of losing the mother she knew and the undeniable fact that the mother she thought she'd lost was still very much alive inside the walls she'd built. One evening, the grandchildren set up a small corner in the garage with the voice recorder and a tablet, hoping to coax Iris into expressing herself. They spoke gently to her, reading from her favorite tech news and encouraging her to respond with the device. It was slow, painstaking work, but each half-smile, each focused glance, was a victory. Margaret watched from a distance, skepticism warring with the undeniable evidence unfolding before her eyes. The air was thick with tension as the family's narrative fractured, exposing raw nerves and unspoken fears. In a family meeting, voices rose. Margaret insisted on the risks of pushing Iris too far. Dana and the grandchildren argued that without support and faith, Iris would be lost to silence forever. The divide was raw and painful. That night, alone in the darkened garage, Iris felt the weight of the conflict pressing upon her. Yet beneath the confusion and struggle, a quiet certainty grew. She would no longer be overshadowed by doubts or diminished by assumptions. The mind that had built empires, spotted innovations, and shaped futures was still here, waiting to be rediscovered. As the family grappled with their fears and hopes, the stage was set for a revelation that would challenge every belief and redefine what it meant to truly see someone. If you believe in second chances, stay tuned for what happens next. The increasing tension within the Vaughn household reached a breaking point one humid Saturday afternoon. The air outside was thick and heavy, mirroring the oppression that had settled inside the house, and everywhere except the garage, where Iris found herself confined both in space and perception. But on this day, the grandchildren orchestrated a quiet intervention, not of words, but of truth. Lucas and Emily arrived with a quiet confidence that had been forged through weeks of planning and persistence. They carried not only their grandmother's notebooks and voice recorder but also a laptop, preloaded presentations, correspondence, and emails stitched together from Iris's digital activity, pieces of a puzzle that had long been hidden under the veneer of her incapacitation. They had invited Margaret and Dana to join them in the garage, hoping to transform the place from a room of isolation into the stage for a long-overdue confrontation. Margaret hesitated outside the door, her jaw tight, a mix of apprehension and defiance sharpening her features. Dana, more open but cautious, steadied her voice with a soft, encouraging word, "Let's just listen. That's all." Inside, Iris sat upright in her chair, alert and poised in her modest surroundings. The glow from the laptop screen caught the spark in her eyes, illuminating not just her face but a legacy that refused to be dimmed. Lucas began, his voice steady but gentle. "Grandma's been managing her investments remotely, guiding startups without fanfare. We've gathered her emails, her notes, and the presentations she reviewed. She's been here all along, watching and advising." Margaret crossed her arms, biting back retorts. But as Emily clicked through documents on the screen, showing contract approvals in Iris's name, emails with detailed market analyses, and strategic decisions made during her recovery, the room's atmosphere shifted. The evidence was irrefutable. Then, Lucas played a recording, a clip of Iris's recorded thoughts, captured with her new device, explaining the potential of a budding tech company. Her voice was steady, clear, and insightful, a window into the mind that had been misunderstood. Margaret's expression faltered. Her posture softened, eyes glistening with a dawning realization. I thought she was lost to us," she whispered, voice breaking as the weight of years of assumptions pressed down upon her. Dana reached out, placing a gentle hand on her sister's arm. "She never left, Margaret. We just stopped seeing her." The grandchildren smiled, their quiet rebellion culminating in a family united by revelation rather than division. Iris, gathering strength from the moment, spoke through her voice recorder, her words measured and steady, "I am here. I see you. And I am not finished." Tears spilled freely now. Some of joy, some of regret. Margaret embraced her mother with a tenderness that had been buried beneath years of fear and misunderstanding. The family's walls crumbled. Outside, the soft hum of the street returned to normal, but inside the garage, a new chapter had been written, not just in Iris's story but in the heart of the Vaughn family. This moment cracked open the future, where Iris's brilliance and spirit could no longer be ignored or confined. Don't miss this turning point, true strength shines in adversity. The soft glow of dawn filtered through the curtains of the Vaughn family's living room, where Iris sat comfortably surrounded by the warmth of those who had finally embraced the truth about her strength and spirit. It was a far cry from the cold confines of the garage where she had spent so many months, stripped of her independence and kept at arm's length. Now, with family gathered close, her presence was both a celebration and a quiet declaration of triumph. That morning, Iris was scheduled to lead a virtual meeting with one of the tech companies she had long supported and mentored. The room was arranged thoughtfully by her grandchildren. Emily had set up the laptop, positioning the microphone and camera carefully, while Lucas ensured the connection was stable. Their quiet confidence had grown with every step of the journey, a testament to their unwavering belief in their grandmother's talents. As the video call began, Iris's voice filled the room, clear, confident, and infused with the same sharp insight that had once made her a secret power in the world of technology and investment. The screen showed attentive faces on the other end, clearly hanging on every word. Given the recent market shifts, Iris began, our strategy must pivot to prioritize sustainability and scalable innovation. We can't just adapt, we have to anticipate. The key lies in fostering smaller, agile teams that can iterate rapidly without sacrificing quality. Her knowledge shimmered with the wisdom of experience, and those watching knew they were hearing from a woman who had never truly faded, despite the silence forced upon her. Inside the living room, Margaret sat quietly, absorbing her mother's command of the conversation. There was an almost audible shift in her understanding, an unspoken acknowledgement of the distance between who she had thought Iris was and who Iris truly was. After the meeting concluded, Margaret approached Iris, her eyes glistening with a complex blend of admiration and remorse. "Mom," she said softly, "I'm sorry I ever doubted you. I was scared, but I see now how wrong I was." Iris reached out, her hand trembling slightly as it found Margaret's. "It's never easy to face these tides," she replied gently, "but we're stronger for what we learn together." The grandchildren beamed, their presence a living bridge that had brought the family from division to unity. Emily broke the silence with a hopeful tone, "Grandma, now that you're back with us fully, what's next?" Iris chuckled softly, a sound rich with promise. "The journey is never truly over. There's always innovation to foster, futures to build, and stories to tell." Over the following weeks, the household transformed. Iris regained not only her rightful place in the family but also the respect and admiration that had been denied to her during her darkest days. Margaret's protective instincts softened into support, and the family's interactions blossomed with renewed affection and openness. Friends and acquaintances who had once believed Iris was fading away were surprised to see her vibrant again, leading projects and engaging in passionate discussion. She had become an inspiration not only to her grandchildren but to the entire community, a living reminder that resilience is not measured by the body but by the mind and spirit. The story of Iris Vaughn became a quiet sensation, her journey chronicled in local media, celebrated for its emotional depth and uplifting message. But the greatest victory lay in the simple moments, the laughter around the dinner table, the gentle teasing from grandkids, the collaborative plans for the future. If Iris's journey inspired you, please like, subscribe, and share to celebrate resilience. See you in our next story.